This. No, I know you guys have been paying attention to what's going on with the government shutdown, healthcare. Speaking of healthcare, we've got some goodies for you today. I want you to make sure that you are on our Facebook Live. You'll find us on Facebook Live on WVON 1690 and on the Wake Up Show Chicago. Once you go there, make sure you share the show. It's important to share the show so that everyone can see and hear what we are doing, especially now. So, I want to get to our guests. We have two guests today. This guest is very pertinent, but before I do that, I want to thank Wind Creek Chicago Southland. They sponsor this show each and every week, and we're so grateful for them. We're here 9 a.m. So make sure when you tune in, it's 9 a.m. to 10, an hour of power, and you can give us a call. I want you to light up those phone lines because when you guys have questions, comments, and concerns, then we can hear them live. And that's 773-591-1690. Today's topic, we will be talking about the 340B program. And when we dive into that, we're going to bring on our guests because they're going to tell us exactly what that is. What does it look like? And why you should be concerned. So I'm thrilled to welcome our special guest today. We have John Conrad. Let me get him on the live there. There we go. Okay. We have John Conrad is with us. He's the president and CEO of the Illinois Biotechnology Innovation Organization, also known as IBIO. I hope I'm saying that right because I want to say IBIO. How many people say IBIO? I'm not sure. But he's a leader representing nearly 94,000 life sciences or jobs in Illinois and has been a champion of innovation in our state. John, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Of course.
You
This
did
is
say it correctly. Yes. So,
Oh, so you do
iBio.
say IBIO.
iBio. Yeah.
Oh, iBio.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like the iBio part. Because it takes me like iPhone, whatever, iTunes, everything with it makes sense. It just makes it more personal. Um, so welcome to the show. And I want everybody to know exactly give us a summation of your company.
Yeah. So iBio. So we're a state trade association. We represent the 94,000 life sciences jobs in the state of Illinois. So that's primarily in the pharmaceutical and medical device industry in the state. And as an organization, as a trade organization, what we're really focused on is working with the state to help companies get started, help them grow, and attract them to come to the state of Illinois. And that's the main kind of focus of our organization. We also have a public charity that's focused on STEM education, primarily in underserved communities. And so we do after school STEM programming and summer camps for girls grades 3 through 8 throughout the state of Illinois.
Hmm. I like that. So that you're starting early. Some people
Yes,
feel like you should wait a little bit longer, but you're starting early. Train up a child. You guys,
exactly.
should I say that you are recognized as one of the 100 organizations that will save the world? And that
Yeah,
was
that
by
was
ASAE.
Yeah, we received that designation, really during COVID, and when we started to see a lot of the challenges that states were starting to face, that communities were starting to face, and so what we did was we tapped into our vast membership and to make sure that the state of Illinois had all of the resources that we needed to serve the residents that live here. And so because of that, we received that amazing designation along with our partners at the Illinois Manufacturers Association as well. So,
Well, give us some groundwork here. What is the 340 program and how is it utilized here in Illinois?
yeah, so 340B. So the 340B drug pricing program was created by Congress in 1992 as a federal safety net program with a simple but very important mission, which is to help hospitals and clinics serving low income and uninsured patients and help them stretch their limited resources by providing discounts on prescription drugs. Now, the idea was that these savings would go directly to helping vulnerable patients access affordable medications. But the program has grown dramatically since that time, and it's strayed from its original purpose. It started with just 31 hospitals in 1992,
Mm.
Now there are over 10,000 participating entities in this program, and it's
Mhm.
grown to be a $66 billion program, um, where it was just a $500 million program in 2004. And
Mm.
they're estimating by 2026 it's going to be the largest federal drug program in the country.
Nice. And I see that we are also joined by Dr. Jeffery Sterling. Hi, Dr. Sterling. I I see you're on there. You're on our live line.
Hello, how are you?
Doing swell-tastic. I'm gonna circle back to you, sir. I just want to make sure we get John pretty much pushed out so that we can understand this a little bit clearer so that we can roll into your conversation. But John, going back to the 340 program, and it being originally designed to help safety net hospitals and clinics stretch the scarce federal resources to better serve low income patients, correct?
Correct. That was its original intended purpose.
Hmm. So with that being said, is the Illinois legislator currently considering legislation to expand the program, because we're in some tough
Yeah,
times right now?
yeah, and there is a lot of challenges that are happening with this program. And so one thing that we've seen is that, in 2011, the program allowed the use of contract pharmacies. Before that, each hospital is allowed to use one contract pharmacy. Now there are over 40,000 contract pharmacies as part of this program. Those contract pharmacies are primarily owned by PBMs. And what research has shown from other states is that about 20% of every dollar that goes into the 340B program is actually going towards the PBMs, not to helping patients. What
What's a
we've also seen
PBM?
during this
Maybe I didn't catch on. What's the PBM mean?
PBM, so if you often hear about people talk about the pharmaceutical middlemen, right? So
Mhm.
these are groups that help determine which drugs are covered by healthcare plans, and so they really represent a very important part of this kind of healthcare ecosystem, but they are a very large part of it. I mean, these are Fortune 50 companies. There's primarily three of them that control absolutely everything. Um, and so, I think that part of it's very concerning is you're seeing the complete growth of this program and these PBMs really starting to take it over and take money that should be going to hospitals to
So
patients,
yeah.
and they're going to the PBMs instead, which are absolutely they provide no services directly to the patients.
So the patients are still getting hit in the pockets, it sounds like.
Patients are totally getting hit in pockets, and I think that's one of our main concerns. We've seen this kind of growth happening across the country, but during that same time, we've seen charitable care, which is the purpose of these hospitals,
Mhm.
drop by over 50% in the state of Illinois. At the same time, hospitals that have signed on to be part of this 340B program, about over a third of the revenue they're bringing in from this program is going to stocks, bonds, and other investments. They're not investing in charity care because we're seeing those numbers drop. They're not investing in nurses and doctors because we're seeing the per employee for each bed stay the same. So they're bringing in $66 billion of money now, and it's not getting invested into that part of the organization at all that directly services patients.
No, it's getting invested. It's for
Yeah.
their own personal investment. But what's being proposed now that could allow more entities and contract pharmacies to access those deeply discounted drugs?
Yeah, so House Bill 2371 was proposed in Illinois, and it's a similar bill happening across the country. What's happened is our member companies have started to see this program balloon out of, you know, within the country, and they've also received absolutely no insight into how this money is spent. I mean, our member companies, you would think they would get like a detailed report of like, these are the prescriptions and this is the information. They get nothing. They get a bill. That's it. You owe us this much money.
Mm.
And so they started asking questions of, hey, you know what? We don't think there should be 40,000 contract pharmacies servicing this program. We need to start asking some questions about what's happening. And so they were working with HHS to kind of look at that and to circumvent this, to create more or reduce transparency into the program. what we're seeing are PBMs and hospitals are starting to introduce bills like House Bill 2371, which are trying to keep our member companies from asking these questions of how are you spending this money? Is it going to patients? And so that's why we're really kind of concerned is House Bill 2371 makes this system, which is already not transparent, even less so. And so
So
it's just
they're
taking
not being
advantage.
regulated. There's no regulation saying that you have to answer this question while you continue to line your pockets. Am I hearing you correctly?
You're correct. I mean, there's very little oversight and actionability that can happen at the federal level. Now, they are taking steps now, and there are new
Mhm.
pilot programs coming on to provide more of a rebate model, which is preferred by our member companies. But right now, yeah, there is zero insight into how this is spending, and it's costing taxpayers money.
Oh, wow. I know we only have a short amount of time because we got to get you out of here because you have other things that you got to work on. This is a big one. But if these savings are being funneled into already well-funded hospital systems, how do we ensure that community-based nonprofits and safety net providers, basically the ones that are truly serving low income patients, aren't pushed out or even left behind or eliminated?
Yeah, I think one thing to make clear is absolutely nothing will happen if the Illinois legislature doesn't pass House Bill 2371. The program still operates exactly as it has been for years. So there's a kind of conception that if you don't pass this bill,
Mhm.
that they're going to close these safety net hospitals because they're not this 340B program is going to end. That's false. That's not happening at all. And so, what we need to do is work at the federal level to make sure that there's accountability and we know where this money is going because you know Minnesota passed a bill in their state to directly look at how this money is getting spent, and what they found out was that the safety net hospitals,
Mhm.
their drop in revenue from the program was not because companies weren't giving them money. It was because PBMs were taking too big of a share of the money.
That
And so
part.
that's why we need to make sure that we know what's happening within this program, but that needs to be done at the federal level. So
Wow. Just in my notes here, critics argue that the risk diverting resources from patient centered care and nonprofits and instead funnel savings into large hospital systems. And it just sounds like the underserved are being underserved even more in this case. These hospital systems may be buying drugs at a steep discount, but they're not passing that on. And I know in business, we when we get a discount, we pass those savings on to our clients, our customers. But not in this case. They're billing insurers at the full price and not passing those savings on to the patients. So the people who are supposed to benefit, those that are struggling with high healthcare costs, aren't seeing a dime. What I guess my question to you would be, if the legislator does not pass this law, what's really at stake?
if the legislature doesn't pass this law, what's really at stake is nothing right now because it's going to remain the same.
Mm.
What we need is that federal kind of oversight, and like I
Mhm.
said, they are doing pilot programs
Mhm.
to provide more accountability for these hospitals because, as you said, you know they're getting these amazing discounts, but they're not passing it on to patients. These
Yeah.
hospital systems are buying up the safety net hospitals so they can tap into the program. But then, they're saving across the whole spectrum. And so that's why we need more federal kind of oversight into this. We're starting to see this pilot program, which is we're really excited about. Um, but yeah, I mean, House Bill 2371 that would run counter to what we need. It creates more uh, questions about how these hospitals are using the money.
I want people to be able to look that up. Can you tell me that bill number again, please?
Yeah, so currently it is House Bill 2371.
All right, guys, make sure you Google that so that you can get a better understanding of how that affects you. And what do we need to do? What does the general public need to do to help not dim this light on what you're triumphing to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best and easiest thing is to reach out to your, elected official, and tell them, hey, you know what? I really have concerns with House Bill 2371. I don't think this program's, really working the way it should be working, and I don't think that we need to be passing a bill that, you know, makes it even harder for us to understand what's going on. I think a major red flag for us is, there's a process to pass bills. You have committee hearings, you have these public forums where you talk about them. It's a red flag that they passed this bill and introduced it the last few days of session
Mm,
and just pushed it through the executive committee. That's a red flag. Actions speak louder than words. There's something wrong with this bill, and they don't want the public to know about it.
yeah, it sounds very fishy, as we as we normally
Yeah.
say. I want to bring Dr. Jeffrey Sterling into the fold. Dr. Jeffrey Sterling of Simcoe Solutions. I know you're listening, and tell me, are you cringing over there?
I'm cringing for several reasons, but I think that there is a more round part to the conversation that needs to be given to consumers because the action item that needs to be taken needs to really be defined. So let me just clarify a couple of things. The point, there's just too much nebulousness in the existing bill, and that's the problem. The reason why this is an issue is because of the existence of the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, who, as was mentioned, take out up to 20% of the money that could be going to consumers. The reason why there's a problem secondarily is because there is subject to interpretation what the law means to begin with. It is interpreted that the benefit can either be one of two things. It can be a pass through to consumers, or it can be a benefit to entities that choose to serve consumers in low income areas. So, in many instances, what the hospitals and clinics have decided to interpret this as is, hey, this is the cost of doing business. My keeping the money instead of passing it on to the consumers means that I'm allowed to stay in this community where I wouldn't be otherwise. And that's, what people were skeptical about, whether or not people would actually be in business if this benefit was necessarily mandated to be passed down to the consumers. So the ask to the consumers is to say, hey, prioritize us. Don't prioritize hospitals that have multiple revenue streams. I shouldn't have to be paying $12 for Tylenol in a hospital. The hospital is going to be just fine anyway. And oh, by the way, these PBMs aren't nebulous entities in the background. These are entities like CVS and Walgreens. These guys are doing quite well. So there's plenty of room for consumers to be part of the conversation. Part of the problem until entities like iBios stood up is that, well, when these go to state legislatures and on the federal level, of course, these other entities have lobbies that are able to speak their points and make their points, but no one has been speaking out for consumers. And that's why it's important to have this part of the conversation so that people can, right before VO session, which is why this conversation is being had today, can actually say, hey, fall down on the side of consumers for a change. Protect us. It's our pocketbooks that are hurting. There's plenty of ways for the facilities that are providing care to continue to stay afloat, but nobody's looking out for the consumers.
Yeah. And that's a scary thought. Of course, we hear this over and over again, Dr. Sterling and John. I'm just thinking I smell a rat. That's just what I'm thinking as a consumer, as a person that takes care of my father. We're constantly going through the cost of medication. And this program sounds like it, as you stated before, it was never meant for the hospitals to profit from, but they found a way. They found yet another
Well,
way.
that's debatable. But see, that's the debate. It's debatable as to whether it was. What we're saying is let's be affirmative
Mhm.
and adjust and amend the legislation so that it is clear that it is meant to be a pass through to the consumers. Because if that's not what we're saying, then what we're saying is we're giving tens of billions of dollars as corporate welfare. Are we subsidizing hospitals here, or is this benefit meant to be something that supports consumers. And that's what needs to be further defined. And that's what the bill, um, the lobbying for this bill is about. Is let's come down on the side of consumers. Let's pass through that money so that we don't have to choose between food and our pharmaceuticals when it's intended that low income communities can finally get some relief in this conversation. We don't have a lobby as strong as the pharmaceutical companies or the hospitals in this particular example, and this is an opportunity to level the scales just a touch.
Thank you. John, any last words before we let you go?
Yeah, I think it's really important to underline that we support what we see as the original intent of the program, and that is to provide members of underserved communities with access to affordable medication. That's what we believe this program's for. That's what we want this program to be. The original 31, entities serving these communities, that's a reasonable number. 10,000 hospitals, that's not a reasonable number. 40,000 contract pharmacies, that's not a reasonable number. We need to know what's going on, and we need to make sure that these dollars are going to where they're most needed.
Agreed.
Wow. Thank you so much, John, for joining us today on the Wake Up Show Chicago. Your insight into the 340B program and the legislation around House Bill 2371 was both eye-opening and necessary. We appreciate all the work that you're doing at IBO. I want to say IBO. It's iBio. So I want to say that so bad to strengthen life sciences and promote innovation right here in Illinois. And again, I just want to thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, come back anytime. All right, guys, you're listening to the all new, I was going to say the all new afternoon show. Lord have mercy. You're listening to the Wake Up Show Chicago. I'm hosting today. Dr. Larry Ivory is out, but I know he's listening. Those of you that want to call in and get your voices heard, please give us a call at 773-591-1690. And if the lines are busy, just call back. The lines are open as we speak. Now, I just want to shift conversations just a bit because while the 340 program, 340B, I want to say that so bad, is about hospital discounts and patient access and what happens after those discounts are secured, that conversation was pretty heavy. But joining me now, and as you heard slightly earlier, is someone who's no stranger to breaking down complex healthcare issues and making them plain. Okay, I had to say that, Dr. Sterling. Dr. Jeffery Sterling, CEO of Simcoe, officially welcome to the Wake Up Show for today.
There you go. Hi there.
Hello, hello. And what we're going to talk about basically is how hospitals are keeping the savings from programs like the 340B and still charging patients the full price. Am I correct?
Kind of. So hospitals are not the villains here. Hospitals are struggling as well. And when a law is nebulous enough to allow them this amount of wiggle room, they're going to take it. There's a significant number of hospitals in safety net communities and critical access hospitals that are closing. So their struggle is real. The managed care organizations are given a lot of money in Illinois and across the country to manage care and manage cost. And sometimes that means, well, most times that means squeezing hospitals, squeezing ambulance companies, squeezing physicians so that they can generate profits, which is, why they have the largest buildings in the country. So the struggle for hospitals are real. And what the problem here has been is that the law is just nebulous enough, as was mentioned, that the original intent can be strayed away from and hospitals can be justified in keeping that money just on the basis that, hey, the patients are benefited by having this healthcare facility in their community, and that's going to have to be enough because every penny counts. We're looking under every rock to try to continue to stay financially viable. And, it would be an exaggeration to say that hospitals aren't struggling. However, that's not the point of the bill. The bill really was originally intended to pass benefits on the consumers. And if hospitals are struggling, they need to advocate for other ways to generate revenue and to get support for their operations. In this particular example, the law needs to be interpreted consistent with its original intent and provide support back to consumers that are paying way too much for pharmaceuticals and other medicines.
Mm-hmm. And because we have we have discovered that, hospitals, there's patient care, there's lack of access to patient care that we throw around so loosely. But at the same time, those that are within patient care, or should I say, person-centered care, it is it's pretty difficult to understand the nuances as a consumer when you get those hospital bills, or even doctor bills. You don't have to be hospitalized, Dr. Sterling. I know for a fact that business owners are really having a tough time with deciding if they're going to offer health care. And and because of things like this, because it sounds like it is so astronomically unaffordable, even for the main consumer, the direct consumer, I should say. What about businesses? How do they play a part in this?
Well, see, as the saying goes, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Mm.
And the point of this and the relevance to the wake up show is that I remember famously when GM said this a couple of decades ago that healthcare bills and healthcare benefits to their employees had replaced employee wages as the number one expense on their ledgers. So costs are continuing to rise, and there's nothing that suggests that they're going to do anything else but exponentially rise in the next couple of days, frankly, as a result of some of the policies that have recently been passed. So if you are in business and you're trying to be competitive in attracting talent to your organization, healthcare benefits have always been a way in which that's occurred, which is what happened back in the early 1900s when healthcare benefits were first, produced via companies. So now if you're a small business, you either are going to have a healthy workforce or you're going to have a not so healthy workforce. And one way in the past to secure that has been to offer some type of healthcare benefit. And the way these things work is that brick by brick, it's becoming more and more difficult to offer healthcare benefits to employees. And whether, there's a lot of variation in it. It's not just insurance. There's pharmacy benefits, there's vision benefits. All of these things matter. But, the point and the relevance to this overall conversation is that if you just keep seeing incremental increases in pharmacy costs and healthcare costs, as they've always been across the board, it's going to become unsustainable. And that has real ramifications for businesses because your workforce isn't going to be healthy. You're going to have more people taking more time off. They're going to be less productive when they're at work because health just isn't affordable anymore, which is an amazing thing to ponder. But that's exactly where we are, and the ramifications for small businesses that may only have one or two employees. You just can't afford to have one of those individuals take that time off or to chronically not be able to produce at the highest level.
This sounds like people are going to be more reactive than proactive. How do you work in the ER? How do those ER? How does the ER traffic look now, or has it
Yeah.
increased? Since this administration. Tell us what to expect in the ER when it comes to ER traffic.
Well, business is always good in the emergency department. One of my companies is an emergency medicine staffing company, so we provide physicians. We've done this at over 35 hospitals across the country. But, to your question, emergency departments remain the safety nets. I think that it was Lindsey Graham, a Republican senator from South Carolina, who famously said when people were talking about there needs to be universal health care, his retort, to paraphrase him, was that there is universal care. Everybody has the right to go to the emergency department. Now, there are two problems with that. Emergency departments are the most expensive portal of entry into the healthcare system in the United States. The average cost of an ER visit in the U.S. is $2,300. And when you consider that 80% of what shows up in a hospital emergency department could have been seen somewhere else, that's remarkable because 80% of the stuff that shows up in the emergency department at a cost of $2,300 could have been seen in a family practice facility at $140, or could have been seen via telehealth or telemedicine for $25 or $50. So emergency departments are not the place where you want to spend your time seeking health because you can't afford it. And it's not sustainable. And oh, by the way, it has nothing to do with health anyway. Healthcare and medical care are two different things. And when you're coming to an emergency department as your portal of entry, that means disease is already presented and you're in a bad way, which is why at Simcoe we always say, stay ready so you don't have to try to get healthy. And the more you can do as a consumer to be a better steward of your own healthcare, and to be involved in health prevention and health promotion, the longer you're going to be able to stay away from a hospital emergency department, those high costs, and the consequences of the disease once it's presented.
Yeah, but I'm hearing, okay, so I know that when I go to a med spa, I know how much the treatment is going to be. I know when I go to an esthetician, how much the treatment is going to be. I can prepare for those costs. But when I go to an emergency room, there's no menu on the board. There's no way of knowing how much or even what I will need during that visit. I'm sitting there
Yeah.
with a reactive issue of, well, I'm taking a reactive protocol to go to the emergency room when, yeah, I probably felt this pain or this itch, 2 months ago. And now I
Well, you're actually
finally,
making my point.
yeah, I can't take it anymore. But I don't know how much it's going to cost me at the
Well, that's the
emergency
point,
room.
LaDonna, because you shouldn't be at the emergency department to begin with.
So
And that's
so
the
keep
point.
people blind
There's
because
no
I
menu.
shouldn't be there?
Hold on. Let me make my point. The point of the matter is that there are other portals of entry into the healthcare system that are infinitely less expensive than the emergency department. You can have a menu. You can actually ask at the registration desk what the cost of things are. You can access that. They're not published menus, but the point is that that is not the priority. If you are showing up at a hospital or emergency department, the presumption is that you are there because, and there's a law called EMTALA, Emergency Medicine Treatment and Labor Act, where consumers have the right to present to an emergency department without the ability to pay if you believe that you are in the midst of a life-threatening emergency. So the presumption when you walk into the door is that I am here for a life threat. And that places the onus on the hospital or emergency department to unload the barrels. Emergency departments are not about making diagnoses as much as we are about ruling out life threats. So you can have your menu, but that's not the consideration of people that are taking care of you in an emergency department. The consideration is preventing you from having a life-threatening consideration. And that means that physicians don't even talk. We're blinded to your financial status. Our jobs as emergency physicians is to ensure that you don't have a life threat. And that means that I'm not even going to allow you to pick and choose between interventions if indeed there is a life threat on the table, because that is against your best interest and counter to the reason why you showed up to the emergency department. So if you want to follow the logic of what you are proposing, then you should have gone to an urgent care facility or freestanding clinic where you can actually get those types of menus. But if you show up at an emergency department, this is meant to be somewhat of a disincentive. But most of the people that show up to an emergency department presumably aren't doing so because of comfort consideration. It's because they're scared for their lives and they want the full benefit of what an emergency department brings. So there's often not time for a casual conversation about, okay, here's your menu, pick and choose from this option, because you're not directing your care in these instances. The
Exactly.
physicians are. And
Yeah.
we're ruling out life threats, not just making diagnoses.
And
Now,
you
80% of the time you're wrong because 80% of what shows up in an emergency department could have and should have been seen somewhere else. So my advice to people is start by using a telehealth or telemedicine facility. Start by going to an urgent care. If something is actually really going on, then they can refer you to the hospital or emergency department. But you have to understand and accept the fact that if you show up in an emergency department, it is the most expensive portal of entry into the healthcare system. And part of that is, as you point out, somewhat inappropriate. But the bottom line is that, it's dying time for a lot of people who do show up in the emergency department. And job one is preventing that from happening.
I'm still concerned that if I'm at the emergency department, which I've been, one time, I was on Medicaid, Illinois Medicaid, obviously, because I live in Illinois. But I traveled to California, had the worst asthma attack. Inhaler wasn't working, nothing was working. I felt like I was going to pass away. I went to the emergency room in California. They gave me well, it took them, they delayed the breathing treatment. It almost looked like they were doing everything but what I needed to have done. They gave me an EKG. I didn't understand that. Um, and then they finally gave me a shot. It was so bad. I had to get I think it's is it epinephrine? You know. I hadn't had that in a
Yeah,
long time.
you never see that.
Yeah, I hadn't had a shot since I was a kid. So that's how bad it was. And then they gave me a treatment. So it was all of those things that led up to me receiving a $17,000 emergency room bill. And because I was out of state, Medicaid doesn't want to touch it. How do you know that? It just turns into such a cycle that if your healthcare doesn't travel, you don't know these things. You think because you have healthcare, quote unquote healthcare, that you're covered no matter what. I'm going to the doctor, but you're not
No,
necessarily. Go on. I'm just saying.
your assumption is wrong, and this is what consumers need to understand.
Well, I know I'm
You coming
wrong,
to the
but
emergency department, your coming to the emergency department is qualitatively different than you're going to see your family doctor. Stop overusing emergency departments. The point of the matter there, you actually illustrated what I said before. You were worried about one thing, but the physicians are more concerned about ruling out a life threat. We'll get to what you're concerned about.
mm,
But when you walk in, you may be expressing symptoms that you don't even understand that could have indicated that your life was immediately at risk. We are in the business in emergency departments of ruling out life threats, not in doing. That's why you have family doctors. If emergency departments were going to do all the stuff that happens in your primary care facilities, then why would you need a primary care facility? Emergency departments are a different animal, and the law allows emergency departments, particularly those in hospitals, to charge exorbitant fees because of the mass utilization of resources that occur in hospital emergency departments. You ever go to a clinic and get tests ordered and it takes 2 or 3 weeks for those tests to come back?
mhm,
Well, you go to an emergency department, all those tests get done in an hour.
mm,
You're paying a premium for that service. Whereas, what I tell people is an ounce of prevention is always worth a pound of cure. The whole reason why we got into the business of health prevention and health promotion in Simcoe is because I am an emergency physician. I see all the excess expense that consumers have that is entirely inappropriate. And there's a better way forward. This is what you're complaining about is the way that the system in this country has been set up. We don't have a healthcare system. We have a healthcare industry,
mm.
and healthcare outcomes being produced is a offshoot of the exchange of commerce. So you are making a decision to pay a lot of money when you come to a hospital emergency department. For everybody out there, please hear me when I tell you, get in touch with a telehealth or telemedicine company. We offer all of that. Ask sterlingmd.com. Call it up. You'll pay $25 and $50 for the same types of things by the same types of healthcare providers that you'll pay thousands of dollars for in a hospital or emergency department. Call your family doctor. That office visit is not going to be more than $100 to $150 for the same thing that you'll pay thousands of dollars for in an emergency department. So, this doubles back to the other thing. Hospitals have huge infrastructures. They have huge overhead expenses, and that comes with huge costs to consumers. So consumers will do much better to be better stewards of their own healthcare
Yeah.
and to have, self-empowerment and to know when to appropriately use different parts of the healthcare system.
I agree. I mean, I'm with you, but asthma attack is a little bit different. I want to make sure that everybody knows you can call in 773-591-1690. I got a couple of questions for you guys that are listening. Have you ever had to choose between paying for your medication or your rent? Okay. Have you ever been in that predicament? Um, I also want to know, do you believe hospitals are passing along the savings? Yes or no? I know we talked about it, but do you feel safe going to your current healthcare provider and feeling that you're getting the best, I hate saying it, deal? Are you getting those savings? Because we have the RX cards for medication. And sometimes your doctor can sit down with you, Dr. Sterling. I've had my doctor sit down with my dad and myself and say, this approach is more efficient. However, this approach may cost less and get more so approved by your insurance company. I mean, you really have to take a crash course on customer service and asking questions because I think we just kind of fall at the mercy. I know we're wrong, but we fall at the mercy of getting the bill afterwards. And we have to kind of get ahead of it. And I'm learning that. I'm totally learning that because I've always had PPO, but I can't say always. When I had PPO, I got a little spoiled, Dr. Sterling. But even that's expensive. But I knew
Yes.
I could pick up the phone and call any doctor, go anywhere. My pinky was up and so were my costs. So that comes at a
Yeah.
premium. But you have to understand how it works. And I don't think we do. I don't think we understand that.
Yeah. And LaDonna, for you, so just take what you said before, because you're absolutely right. And I don't mean to downplay the fact that you actually were in the midst of an asthma attack. That actually is a life threat, and that should have been covered in real time at the beginning of the presentation, because we always focus on issues of airway, breathing, and your circulation. Those are part of what we call a primary survey. However, when it comes to an illness, and if you have asthma, for example, you can deal with these things in multiple ways. And the way that I would tell consumers to stop doing is to wait until you have an asthma attack and come to an emergency department. There's so many other things that you can do. So let me just tell you this. It's not going to take more than a minute. Asthma is a disease of triggers. And what that means is that if you simply identify your trigger and remove it from your environment, sometimes it's cats, sometimes it's cold weather, sometimes it's tree pollen or whatever the case may be. If you can identify the trigger and remove it from your life, you will no longer have attacks. It is just that simple. Kids don't outgrow asthma. They move away from their homes that had the triggers in them. So the type of conversation that we have at Simcoe is we will teach you about how to prevent your asthma. And that is a hell of a lot less expensive than coming to an emergency department in the midst of an asthma attack and paying thousands of dollars. So you see how this works? Healthcare exists on a huge spectrum. And we have got to do better to transform our community to be better stewards of our own health care, to become more involved in health prevention and then get engaged in health promotion, and to appropriately use the right parts of the healthcare system. Get a primary care physician, learn how to use telehealth and telemedicine as a triage function, as a screening consideration. That's a hell of a lot less expensive. Get a relation with your primary care physician and learn how to call them when they're on call or during the day to get in and see them. And then use the emergency department for what it says it is, an emergency department. Mm-hmm. So it's the most convenient thing because you can always access it. But, you've probably done something that you didn't want to do if you came there for something that could have been dealt with at a much less expensive part of the healthcare system.
My mother is probably trying to call me right now because you said they don't outgrow asthma. You move away from the environment. I am going to say it. That makes so much sense. My mother was a smoker. Well, it still is. And every time I remember back then, everyone smoked, even in the restaurants. And back in my day, not everyone had air conditioning. So when I was in a hot, compressed smoke environment, asthma was just my life. But when I moved away, you're right. I hadn't had an attack in a long time. And that's why when I was in California, I was kind of taken by surprise. I had my inhaler, but the
Let me give you
environment.
another quick one.
What?
Let me give you another quick one that's going to make somebody mad.
Go ahead.
Diabetes doesn't run in families as much as you have a common cook that's cooking disease that creates type 2 diabetes in entire families.
I'm with you on that. Like, what food? These foods are the triggers. What are the foods that definitely contribute to diabetes?
Well, we don't have time for that conversation, but what I will tell you is part of what we rail against is, as a community, African Americans still suffer from what I call an evolved post-slavery diet. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to let you marinate on that one for a bit. It'll come to you in about an hour. But what we've done is that we have seasoned beyond recognition stuff that we had no business eating, that we were only given because it was the throwaways from what slave owners wouldn't eat themselves. So now we've culturally appropriated bad habits, and we're suffering the health consequences of these things. So once again, an ounce of prevention is so much better than a pound of cure. And I'm so glad you brought up that conversation, mad about emergency departments, when indeed that's the pound of cure that you should be trying to avoid. Eating healthy shouldn't cost as much in the short term or long term.
Yeah, I agree with you. And not that I want everyone by the sound of my voice. Don't feel bad that you've done this because we can change these habits.
Exactly.
Now's the time to change. I remember when I announced to my family that I was no longer eating pork. And the first thing that they said to me was, "You've been eating pork all your life." And I said, yeah, but I'm looking at you all and everybody's taking a pill for everything. I am so proud to say that I am as old as I am and I take no medication except for my inhaler
Exactly.
as necessary. What, twice a year? You know, so
Hmm.
and that's when Canada's sending us that ugly smoke. I noticed, but this is a good time to get started. And and based on our conversation, Dr. Sterling, what is it that our listening audience can prepare for that's upcoming so that they can be a I guess we should say be better prepared.
What a wonderful question. What a wonderful
Yeah.
question. And what I would tell people is to don't prepare for what's upcoming.
Mm.
Let's stop being reactive. Let's be better stewards of our own health care. The question to ask and answer is what can we do to protect ourselves regardless of what's coming?
Mm.
Right? So, like you just said, the closer to the earth that you're eating, the healthier you're going to be. And the long and short of it is that more fruits and vegetables in your diet is better than more beef and pork. We already know this. We know things. We know things. And stop it. We know things. We know that alcohol is a toxin. There is no safe amount of alcohol to consume. Hard stop. It causes more than a half a dozen different cancers up and down the digestive tract. So we know these things. We just have to do a better job of implementing strategies that we know produce health. We have to get in the habit of screenings and getting immunizations. We know so much of what to do already. We just don't do as good of a job as a community as promoting those habits. So just think about this. There was a point in time a generation ago where people, models would get teased for being skinny, right? And so skinny shaming was a thing now. But now the pendulum has swung completely in the other direction, such that people who are actively trying to be healthy, what's the first thing that they'll hear? You look sickly. Are you sick? Do you have cancer? Are you dying? Do you have AIDS? And meanwhile, we worship body habits, this is with all due respect, that aren't healthy because there's no such thing as big bone. The bones are the same. They just have a whole lot more meat around them. And the heart isn't about dollar signs they love. It's just a pump that pushes blood around the body, providing nutrients to your body. And the more weight that heart has to pump against, the worse off it's going to be, which is why people have high blood pressure. So the long and short of it is to everybody here, it doesn't take, this is the great part of the conversation. It doesn't take that much. Incrementalism is a beautiful thing. So just get up and just start walking. You don't have to go to a gym to exercise. Put some fruits and vegetables on your plate. Eat a handful of grape instead of a handful of cake for dessert. There are very small things that you can do that will protect you and increase your life expectancy so that regardless as to what comes, because remember, we don't have a healthcare system in this country, so what's coming downstream are just going to be changes to the sick care system that we have in place. But if we stay ready, then we don't have to vacillate back and forth depending on what changes based on what administration come into play, giving us more or less access to the medical care system. Let's focus as a community on getting healthy. And these are the types of conversations we have all day, every day in communities at Simcoe, because stay ready so you don't have to try to get well once disease presents. It's all about that.
I'm going to give you my little slogan. Being healthy is fun.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
Nobody's best day of their life was on a day in which they were sick.
Right. That's right. I love it. I love it. Well, you know what? I am so glad that you were with us today on the Wake Up Show Chicago. You are pretty much a family member of this show, and we love having you because you always bring that insight. I love your book, 72 Hours in a Day. Yeah, thank you for autographing it because I have a special copy. But
I'm not supposed to tell people that.
well, I'm just saying we have been able to apply it in our own lives. I work with my children on it, so there's a matter of I have them doing things now instead of waiting until later because later never comes. I love the book. Along with that, guys, you can get his book on Amazon. Look for 72 Hours
But
in a Day, right? No?
yeah, of course.
Oh,
Books.
okay.
There's 8 books, and the 9th book is forthcoming. So, it's all about helping people. That's the bottom line here. If we want to make people better at whatever they choose to do in life, more educated, more informed, more powerful, more spiritual, whatever it is you want to do.
I love it. Thank you
That's
so
the
much.
mission.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Being with you as
Sterling.
always.
Of course. All right, guys. We got a couple of minutes. I want to make sure I get some stuff out to you. make sure you go to ilbcc.org to become a member of the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce. Let me tell you something. They've got a plethora of relationships. And being a member of this organization will actually make you a member of the family. So our relationships become your relationships. And what does that mean for your business? Well, that means that you can build generational wealth because you are connected to the right people. So make sure you go to ilbcc.org and look into becoming a member. Also, I got a full Saturday. Someone asked me, can I do this and that? And I'm telling you, I have no more room, but I'm going to the screening of Seasoned with Aretha Tatum. I can't wait to see that screening today. I'm actually in this particular episode. And Victor Gully, he's got a taste of theater at ETA Theater tonight at 6 o'clock. I love what he's doing at ETA, Black owned theater company. Yes, we got to get out there and support people. And there's one more thing. Sisters with Superpowers. Rolling Out Magazine is doing their annual event, Sisters with Superpowers. I want to make sure you guys know that there are tickets still available for that soiree, if you will, because we want to see your butts in the seat. That's going to be Sunday, October 12th. It's the awards luncheon, the Radisson Blue Aqua Hotel, 221 North Columbus Drive. Just look for Sisters with Superpowers, or you can go to our Facebook page at Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce, and you'll find the flyer and the information so that you can get your tickets now. There's a promo code, Windy City. I'll see you guys, 2 weeks from now. We're going to take a break from next week. I know. Don't get sad. But we'll be back the following Saturday on the I was going to say the all new afternoon show, but I'll be here Monday for the all new afternoon show. We're celebrating the Million Man March, guys. It's about that time. But the Wake Up Show Chicago will be back the week after next. Still tune in. We'll see you then. Bye-bye for now.
Get ready to wake up to the pulse of progress as we amplify voices, break barriers, and illuminate the path towards a more inclusive tomorrow. Follow us across the socials at The Wake Up Show Chicago. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. It's The Wake Up Show every Saturday morning at 9, where change begins with every sunrise. Welcome to The Wake Up Show Chicago.
That's the end?
The talk of Chicago is 1690 WVON, Berwyn, Chicago.
It all comes down to this, folks.
Yep, the entire season is on the line.
But my throat has officially thrown in the towel.
Sounds like you need Vicks VapoCool drops. They're max strength and vaporize sore throat pain.
Whoa! These VapoCool drops hit fast.
Speaking of fast, did you just see that play?
Yeah, he vaporized that ball.
That pun should have come with a penalty.
Vaporize sore throat pain with Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed.
VapoCool.